The way that I grew up in my household, if you didn't want to do something, it wasn't enough to say, I just don't feel like doing that right now.
Okay.
I am gaining awareness as I'm doing it. You may not necessarily like your choices, but you always have a choice.
Hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host, Keegan, and this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. I've got a question for you. Have you ever thrown spaghetti on the wall to make sure that it's cooked right? Well, I'm glad you have, because that's the only way to really do it. And Christian Swan is our guest tonight, but she doesn't throw spaghetti on the wall to, cook with it. Instead, she uses it to help people journal. So she describes herself as an experiential learner, which is really just a polite way of saying she's learned things the hard way and she's actually living through them. So she's also a former landscape designer and business coach who pivoted to become a life and spiritual guide. She's the creator of Spaghetti on the Wall, a practice and journal designed to help you stop performing for the world and start listening to your own damn self. She believes our pasts, no matter how chaotic, don't define us, they just inform us. So, Christian, how are you doing today?
I am doing fabulously, actually. I am so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to our conversation, and I am just ready to get into it because this is stuff I love.
Well, I'm really glad that you're in it and just ready to rock and roll, because I mean, Spaghetti on the Wall is kind of one of those things that whenever I first heard about it, it wasn't even from someone in my own family. It was someone that they were just over, we were cooking ramen and they just threw noodle at the wall. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? And they were like making sure that it's cooked. And I was like, why? So that's how I learned that little method. And it's kind of like you're helping people relearn how to journal. Is that kind of what you're doing?
Yeah, I love that story, and I have to quickly just share my own story of the first time I learned Spaghetti on the Wall, the literal meaning of it. And it's same kind of thing. My mom was not really a cook. She was more of a kind of a food assembler, but she always made friends with people who were super good cooks. And so we had one friend who was just he had been, I think, like an aspiring actor at a certain point in time. So pretty big personality, right? And kind of embodied that whole like chef persona to kind of what we are familiar with now because of these streaming and whatnot. Yeah, but he comes over and he's making spaghetti and, the tomato sauce is flying and stuff. And then he starts boiling the noodles and starts flicking the noodles on the ceiling to see if they stick. And which is great because then you really know, but a little tough after the fact, right? To clean it off. Yeah. But that he's not worried about that. He's just in the moment. And that was the first time. And as a kid, I'm in, elementary school, and I'm just kind of fascinated with this whole show that is happening in my kitchen. So that is my first experience with Spaghetti on the Wall. And obviously that image stuck with me because once I started thinking about it, was really when I was in the midst of my business coaching and working with clients who I would primarily work with business founders and owners. So we did one-on-one coaching, and we would develop, close relationships, because when you're a business owner, I mean, your personal life and your professional life they're much more intertwined than we used to pretend like that there was this separation. And I would observe my clients kind of doing the same thing over again, right? And complaining about the results. Yeah. Right. And so I felt like, okay, what is the thing that I could do to help clients get some awareness around their own patterns? And also really, I'm kind of fascinated with this idea of how we make choices, our decision-making process. And so I put together this journal, and of course the part of the real truth too is I was repeating some patterns in my life that were not serving me very well. And I didn't want to acknowledge that. I was
Yeah.
just kind of like, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to, just stay really busy. And so spaghetti on the wall has been something that has been with me over time. And I just have found it to be, honestly, it's super simple. It's not meant, I tell people, do this for 10 or 15 minutes a day. It's not meant to be this huge process. There is something really powerful in that consistency, but it's the way that it's set up is it's prompted for you to journal. I use it in the morning and I journal about the day before, but people use it at night, whatever. But you journal about kind of, the day before or the day that you just finished. And I encourage people to think about journaling in a way that is much more of a non-judgmental observer, right? So you are kind of just writing down it's more than a log of the day to day, but it's really reserving judgment. And then I have what I call an experience evaluator section. And that is just simply, where were those yeses in the day? And the yeses don't have to be these massively big moments. It doesn't have to be that, I don't know, you got engaged, or you got a promotion, or you won the lottery. It's not, it can be those just beautiful moments where, for me, the other day I was looking out my window and there's a hummingbird that comes. I have a plant on my patio there and the hummingbird loves it, but I hadn't seen the hummingbird in so long. And just to kind of out of the corner of my eye, as I'm, furiously working away here, to glance at it, it's like, oh, I love that. And just, those moments that just either kind of have a lightness to them, or that you feel, maybe it's even those moments that you lose track of time, right? You're in that flow state. So those are your yeses. So you take stock of where your yeses were. And then there's a section that's not so much. And it's called not so much because the way that I grew up in my household, if you didn't want to do something, if you didn't feel like going over to so-and-so's house, or if you didn't feel like, I don't know, whatever, if you just didn't feel like doing something, it wasn't enough to say, I just don't feel like doing that right now. You had to create this whole story about how that thing was bad. Right. And that's why, oh, I don't want to go over to so-and-so's house because, their house is messy and it's too noisy. And it's, you just had to find all sorts of reasons instead of just saying, I just don't feel like it right now. So I chose the phrase not so much to really highlight that this is just where you get to recognize that whatever it was and it could be that it just wasn't a great fit for today. It doesn't even mean that it was for forever, it's forever, it's set in stone. It just could be like, gosh, I didn't like it when I scheduled too many things in my day and I felt like I was rushing from here to there, right? So that over noticing where you overcommitted yourself. Maybe I had an instance the other day where I, kind of entered into a conversation that I really didn't have enough time to have. And it needed a more expansive time frame to have. And so as a result, I didn't like how I was kind of rushing and showing up for that. So you just notice those places, and it could be even something external, right? Like you pick up a book that everybody's talking about and recommending, or a show that and you start watching it and you're like, yeah, I'm not sure. Like, does this really deserve my time? Right. And so just notice what is not for you. And then the last section is kind of it's called out of the box inspiration. And I think kind of it may be a section that when you first start the practice of journaling with spaghetti on the wall, I don't know, you might just use it as a brain dump because you start thinking about everything you have to do. It might be that you might just end up doing like dream journals there or something like that. I mean, it can be a space for all sorts of things. And what I will say is, especially, I mean, I think of us all as highly creative beings, right? I also think that when we are anxious, that our creativity goes offline. I mean, it's kind
It's
of like our
gone.
brain is, I don't think it's built to do both things. So what I have noticed over the years of doing Spaghetti on the Wall is that by the time I get to that out of the box inspiration area, I'm in a creative space. And so ideas are coming to me, and that's where I journal about those things, because I've kind of, any anxiety that I came to the journal with has been, and it is a physical journal where you use a pen, because I do feel like, or a pencil or marker, whatever.
A quill.
A quill, exactly. But it is that, it's so important to have that that physical kinesthetic activity going along with the journaling too. I think that there is something very powerful about journaling with paper on pencil, and or pen on paper, that physical activity.
Yeah, I really think that there's something to just writing. Let's follow this weird rabbit hole train real quick, because we might connect some dots for everyone. So I love the spaghetti on the wall thing, first of all, because that image that you painted in my head is this awesome, like, Disney cartoon-esque, like, Chef Ratatouille thing going on, everything going everywhere. And so, of course, being a little kid going into a kitchen like that is like, so this is an adult doing this kind of thing. And so that kind of like breaks open some barriers right there, saying like, if an adult can sit there and have fun, then I can do that too. But whenever we're brought up in society, we're sitting here getting taught how to behave, because I'm of the mind of thinking that we don't really grow up, we just learn how to behave in public. And whenever we behave in public all the time, then we kind of tell ourselves we don't deserve to be or here, whatever. And so now you're sitting here with this spaghetti on the wall for your journal and writing stuff out. We have to put forth a ton of effort whenever we're children to learn how to write. And whenever we're going through all of this craziness in our heads, trying to voice it out, there's something between here and here that I think that, I mean, it has to go through the heart, right? Whenever you're thinking it out and you're writing it out. So you're kind of connecting these like different pathways in our own body that essentially kind of release things as they're going through, and we may not even realize it. Because I know whenever I've journaled before, I have stuff either resolve itself kind of whenever I write it, and I see it and I'm like, oh, that was silly, why did I feel that anyways? But it's like, well, it's there now, so whatever. But I love it too because you have it broken down into sections, because some people just get overwhelmed with journaling because they don't know, well, do I write this? Was that important? I can't remember the whole day. I can't remember specific things, or maybe I can just remember a specific feeling. What do I do with just little bits of information,
Yeah.
So I love that you're just talking about how it can be a brain dump because a lot of people need that too.
Well, and I really, I mean, there's so many things that I was like, oh, yes, as we were talking. And I mean, so I think just from going back to the most recent thing we were talking about, having these prompts and having them be fairly, simple is, I feel like, is such removes a lot of barriers for people for the journaling process, because the blank page, I don't care if it's the blank page on your computer, the blank page of, if you are a visual artist, the blank page is just, frankly, it's intimidating, right? And to get past that, sometimes we can talk ourselves out of that before we even get started. So that is part and parcel why the journal has these prompts, and it's just, I mean, there's just little, it's actually small enough to throw in your backpack. It's not, it's also not meant to be too precious. So it's meant to be something that it's a workhorse, right? I mean, you mess it up. And somebody asked me, actually, they said, oh, do you go back and reread your journals? And for me, I don't, because I am gaining awareness as I'm doing it. I'm not saying that that doesn't work for some people, but again, to kind of remove this idea that it is somehow, I want every single person to have one of these in their backpack or tote bag, right? I just want to remove that idea that it's just, if you are, a good writer, or you are super smart or creative or whatever. I mean, all the different reasons why we get in our own way, right? And to your point about, that whether or not we really grow up, or whether we're just learning to kind of better navigate this world that we live in, I will say that I agree with you, right? That there is, I mean, I actually was like a tiny adult as a child, because I was taking care of, I was busy raising my parents. And so play is actually something that's harder for me than it is to be, like, okay, we got to have a schedule, and we got to, and we got to keep it all together, because, when we don't, things get a little crazy and go off the rails. So and this idea of what is acceptable, right? How we are, is it okay? And I think so many times what we're really asking when we are doing these dances to fit in, or to not draw too much attention to ourselves, right? It's like we're essentially asking kind of that big question of, will I be loved? Will I belong?
That's a huge question, because I think that that's what everyone's kind of looking for. And a lot of people growing up, whenever you have a lonely childhood, or you're growing up too fast or anything like that, it's something that just kind of gets lost along the way. And it really, whenever you were talking about how the being anxious kind of takes away the creativity side, it really makes me think, because kind of like what you were saying, being self-aware in that regard, like, I've heard that your brain can only focus on one thing at a time, and if you're multitasking, what it's doing, it's just switching in between them really quickly, really efficiently. So it's kind of like, if in having dealt with a ton of anxiety, like, I know that anxiety is living in the future, just essentially trying to plan everything out and expecting the worst case scenario, and also falling prey to that question of, do I fit in, or am I performing correctly for society because I'm trying to not get in trouble, or I'm not trying to do all this? And in the end, it's something that it takes away from being in the moment, and that's where the creativity is, because that's where it's like, hey, I'm going to look at this rock, and cool, that looks like a canyon. Why does it look like a canyon whenever it's just a rock, kind of thing, But I mean, that's the cool thing, is that I think that the kid in us is still a kid, and it's still always there, but we just don't really play anymore. And I've talked to a play coach who thinks that we need to bring play back into adulthood, and I'm like, hell yeah, we do. And he teaches people how to make bean bags or something like that. You can't call them hacky sacks, because it's like a band-aid,
right.
It's a brand name. So
Yes.
but I'm just So are you trying to make people like play with a journal in a sense?
Yeah, I think that there is a very much to what you are naming of, again, kind of taking this seriousness out of it. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't, there's a great, I know I'm going to get it incorrectly, but there's a great quote about, not being able to be serious, right? But not taking oneself too seriously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a sense of, my hope is that people through the journaling process, spaghetti on the wall, I think is a great way to do this. There's other ways to do it, but obviously this is
Uh-huh.
one of my favorite ways, um, is that you get to know who you are. You
Mm-hmm.
really get to know who you are. And by extension, you start to trust who you are. And then
Mm-hmm.
you make choices based on who you are and your own knowing. And I think in that journey of self-discovery, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
is, and hopefully maybe self-acceptance, that there's so much joy. I think that's the other thing is I am always trying to figure out ways to make things simple and accessible for as many people as possible, because I think around the topic of mental health or wellness or even mindfulness, sometimes in meditation, right? All of these things that are very much things that I'm into, and there
Mm-hmm.
can be kind of a sense of seriousness, just real heaviness. And I'm not,
Uh-huh.
and again, I'm not taking mental illness and our mental health. I'm not taking that lightly at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
And but I do think that there's so much joy to be found in being ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, but I mean, being ourselves, for a lot of us, we're trying to not be ourselves growing up. And that's kind of the whole issue, because I think that somewhere along the lines, whenever we're told no, we kind of get the wrong impression, because a lot of the time, whenever we are told no, it's as a child. And as a child, we're really self centered because the world does quite literally revolve around us because we're so young. We're trying to figure everything out. Everything that interacts with us has to have a place in the world because I exist with the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whenever it has to shift from one to the other, that no, that first interpretation of no could be like, hey, this is like an absolute hard area you never cross a no. And other people could be like, oh, it's an exploratory kind of thing, like, oh, I'm going to maybe ask the questions of like, why is it no? And then other people are just going to be like, I was never told no, and so I'm going to get everything that I want.
Well, and I think what you've touched on a couple of times that I wanted to also bring forth and
Mm-hmm.
is the the value of curiosity,
Yeah.
right? Both.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you know spaghetti on the wall is not going to work for someone who just doesn't even have a kernel of curiosity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I cannot instill in
No.
someone.
Uh-uh.
And so how, and as kids, right, we have so much. We are just one big ball of curiosity. And
Mm-hmm.
that there's this conditioning, right, that can happen over time, whether it's our parents or our peers or other people in our lives. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that part of the process of getting to know yourself and getting comfortable with yourself is you can start to think about those things that you've acquired and inherited, right, through
Mm-hmm.
your experiences of growing up. And you can start to also have a greater understanding. Like, I know that, I grew up spending a lot of time with my grandparents. I mean, they just were a really formative part of my life. And both on my dad's side and then my grandmother on my mom's side. And my grandmother on my mom's side was very permissive in certain ways of, I could stay up late. I could, watch way too much TV because we didn't have a TV at home. So I would just be like, oh my gosh, I gotta get my fill of TV. She would buy, she'd buy those horrible cereals that are all like sugar, where that wasn't happening at home. I mean, so in certain ways, she was very, she was, kind of letting us do wild things. And there were also all of these messages that she was sending about how I was to be as a person out in the world. Don't be too loud. Don't be too like fidgety or rascally, right? You don't want to draw too much attention to yourself. And so much of that really, and sometimes it was hurtful because, I mean, sometimes I might show up and have an outfit on that I think was cute, and she'd be pretty negative about it. Yeah. And I know now, and I mean, I've known it actually for quite some time, but how much of those comments that she was making were really based on her care about me and wanting to keep me safe, right? So much of, and I think of just myself. I mean, I am a parent to 3 young adults, and I think of, gosh, I really wish I had some days I just wish I had a do-over, because there are these moments where I feel like I was trying to make them small or keep them safe. And really, when I reflect on it, it's like, oh gosh, like what would it have really mattered, right? If they had, run crazily through that museum or whatever. I mean, instead of, in my head as the parent, thinking, oh God, I don't want us to get kicked out, or I don't want, the guard to yell at them, or I don't want, and it's like, so what? Like, so what if we had gone to a museum and 5 minutes later, because we were running through the museum, we got kicked out? I mean, really? Yeah. But it's so hard when and so I do have a ton of compassion. I mean, I have to give myself compassion about, my parenting choices and when I think about my grandparents or my own parents, it's like, I know that it feels like it's a cliche or just maybe even excuse to say people are doing the best that they can. But it really is true. Right?
Yeah. I think that sometimes they are doing the best they can, but I mean, sometimes I don't think that. I think that one is just up in the air. It's highly contextual for me. But
I will agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah, because it's kind of like one of those things where if someone knows their faults, if they know where they could improve to either better themselves and or the people around them, and they still choose not to, then it's like, all right, does that make the distinction between them being a good person or bad person or something in between? Because they have the knowledge to change and they choose not to. Then if it's bringing harm, then what does that say? But
I think it says that they are deeply, deeply afraid.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing too. But whenever they're wanting change, if they're asking for it and they're presented the options of like, hey, here's the things that you can do, and they still say no, then yes, I do agree that there's a lot of fear there.
And I'm not saying we're getting into it a little deep, kind of in a sideways way. I'm not saying that for people that we may be interacting with who are asking for how to change and they have the information, we still get to choose to have boundaries, right?
Oh, of course.
Around these people. And I mean, I will say having had people in my life that are doing harm to others, doing harm to themselves, have, asked for help and have been given some ideas of things that might be more beneficial in terms of behaviors or even resources, and have chosen not to do it. I mean, I think it's still, my heart does still go out to them. I don't necessarily need to stay in contact with them, but my heart goes out to them because it's so, I think it's just so scary for some people to change.
Oh, yeah. No, and change is entirely one of those things that everyone tries to avoid, but it is inevitable. And that's the thing, is that whenever we're stuck in our ways, we're just a lot of the time stuck in our ways, and usually the only thing that gets us out is pain, unfortunately. But that's kind of the thing, is that whenever you were growing up, if you had that permissive aspect of saying, like, especially from an influence, a single influence, and then at the same time they're shifting their message of saying, like, you can, but you got to do it this way. And it's like, it really does give you a ton of mixed messages that will sit there and kind of make you second guess everything else that's going on. And I mean, that's the only thing that would get a lot of people into a knot, is just sitting there and second guessing every breath that they took, because maybe it was too loud and they interrupted the person that was in front of them that was trying to concentrate on a test or something, then we've got a lot of different things that people are trying to figure out about themselves. And change is one of the things that we can facilitate on our own. And Spaghetti on the Wall sounds like it's one of the best things for people to kind of guide it for themselves, right?
Yeah. And I think that I mean, certainly in my coaching practice with business owners, I mean, I used to, say both to my clients and just to myself, it's like, I am not necessarily in the business of changing people. And I still feel that way in my workshops and as a journal creator. I'm not necessarily in the business of changing people, because I think that, change, as we said, is a deeply personal choice. And there's many ways that change can evolve for a person. What I really strive to do, and I know what was so helpful, as I mentioned in my own life, that I really, at the time that I'm creating this journal supposedly for everyone else, how deeply I needed it. And the thing that really helped me was the awareness, right? So having a practice and a place to really just, number one, take some stillness for myself, right? Because I was mentioning that is when I was deeply in a place of discomfort and, repeating old patterns, I was like, oh gosh, I'm just going to keep running as fast as I can. So so being willing to get still for a second and reflect, and the awareness that came forth for me, it didn't happen. I mean, I didn't make the shifts I ultimately made overnight. Timing is so individual. But I will say, once that awareness kind of crept into the consciousness, because it was there, right? I just was like, ah. But once it, came online, it's like, it's pretty hard to not pay attention to it.
Yeah. And it's kind of like it's a little seed that's been in your head forever. And then next thing you know, because it's a lot like a seed of bamboo, because bamboo is takes 5 years or so developing its root system. And the next thing you know, it grows up like 3 feet a day. It's just
Well,
like,
yeah, and
where's it
if
been?
it's, I mean, it'll grow up through concrete, it'll bust through anything. So, I mean,
Yeah.
bamboo is not to be stopped, right?
No.
And I feel like that was kind of like my awareness, right? I mean,
Uh-huh.
it took a while to get there and start growing, but I mean, once I was aware of it, it couldn't be stopped.
Yeah.
And
What
that
was
was a
one of
good
the
thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. And what was one of the things that kind of made you go like, "That's what this is"? It's awareness, because
Hmm.
I mean, we're all kind of aware, aren't we? We're awake. We're talking. We're walking. We're interacting with the things that we're doing. We're doing our jobs. We're going to work. We're driving to work. How did I get to work? I don't remember the last 10 minutes in the car. Crap. Like, so how do you define awareness for yourself? Well, what would you say made that click? What was it that made the spaghetti stick to the wall?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Oh my gosh, that is such a good question because it really was, for me, what made the spaghetti stick is that physical act of writing it down.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I mean, you mentioned earlier that you wrote down, you kind of had this feeling, right? And you were
Mm.
like, oh, okay, and so, I mean, you can have these thoughts, right? You can just be in your head. I mean, you can even be ruminating over and over, right?
Mm.
About this problem that you have, right?
Yeah.
And yet there's something about when you're writing it down, and again, kind of writing it down from that non-judgmental observer, just saying, hey, this is what's going on. Right. Then
Mm.
it almost puts you in that place where you're like, and sometimes I will definitely tell my kids to do this, right? It's like if they're struggling with something or they're kind of being hard on themselves, I'm like, okay, what would
Mm.
you, if you were your best friend right now was telling you this, what would you say to
Mm.
them? Right. And so kind of the writing down in that witnessing role that you're assigned here kind of puts you in that seat where you're like, okay. So not only am I, okay, so I'm starting to see things a little bit more
Mm.
clearly. And I think what it also ends up happening, and I'm not really sure kind of where the bridge is for this. And I think I
Mm.
need to be paying closer attention, but I know for myself what ended up it was like the awareness and that bumps along for a while. And then there was this realization. It's like, oh gosh, you have a choice.
Mm. Oof.
You have a
Oof.
choice.
Uh-huh. Ouch.
And you may not necessarily like your choices, but you always have a choice. And that is true
Yeah.
for, I mean, that's, and I'm talking at very, the granular level, right? And
Mm.
I believe strongly that as you start making choices that are informed by who you are and are much more in alignment with who you are, so that knowing
Mm.
and trusting space, then I actually think that your choices start getting better and better.
Mm. Ooh.
But at the beginning, those choices may feel like, oh gosh,
Mm.
I've got a choice to, submerge myself in, jump in freezing cold water, or I've got a choice to like walk through a hot desert for, a week or something. Like it doesn't feel like
Mm.
there's any good choices, right?
Yeah.
And
Unfortunately.
yeah, and usually, I mean, the other thing that we tend to do in these magnificent machines of our brain is we can make things seem so complicated. So I think the other
Mm.
thing that happens is through the journaling process for me is not only that awareness and kind of that noticing of repetition of patterns
Mm.
and the kind of the simplicity of the solution that is my choices, let's say, that can aim towards kind of solution oriented thinking become much more clearer.
Okay. I love that whole aspect of informed choices about who you are and aligned with that awareness aspect. And I also love the fact that you were talking about how we always have a choice. I mean, after dealing with addiction and everything like that, it's one of those things a lot of people will sit there and say, well, like I couldn't help myself. And it's true. Like after a certain point in addiction, you do lose that choice.
Yeah.
I refer to it as the disease of choice for a reason. But
Mm-hmm.
whenever we're sitting there and we're trying to make that choice, a lot of the time it's a scary one, you
Yeah.
know? And whenever you're in addiction, for example, I have the choice of, well, do I drink or do I not? And at some point, there were moments where it was like, I don't want to drink. And then, but I also realized I was so far in the hole that quitting drinking on my own could kill me. So to live, I had to drink. And it was a weird paradox. I hated it. But one of the things that people say is that, well, I didn't have a choice. And people go, well, did someone hold a gun up to your head kind of thing? And I'm still like with the conviction of, even with a gun to my head, I still have a choice of, nah, I'm not going to do the thing. Like, go ahead and kill me. Like, I know the choice. Like, my choice is to do one thing or another. And that's why I think that it's interesting that we're also sitting here saying, whenever we realize that a lot of this change aspect is happening to ourselves, sometimes it's because other people are having an influence in our lives, and maybe we have to change in accordance to that. Or maybe it's because we're just having everything happen at once and we don't know where to change. We don't know what choice to make. And so it's
Yeah, but I think there can be, yes, there can be multiple choices, right?
mhm,
Um, just to back up a little bit, one thing that I will say is doing nothing about a situation
is a choice.
is a choice. And so I
Mhm,
do think we have to get super clear with people,
mhm,
ourselves.
yeah. Yeah.
The people that I'm talking about to start with
Yeah.
is ourselves, right? I mean, when
Uh-huh.
we choose to do nothing, when
That's a
that is
choice.
a choice. Okay. So
Yep.
that, and yes, there can be multiple choices, right? And they can have, they can have different properties to them. But again, I think what has been helpful for me, and it's hard to do, but again, this process of putting pen to paper, right, is requiring a certain amount of stillness, right?
Mhm.
And so a lot of times, if you are feeling like, whoa, there's so many choices out there, you're probably doing a little future tripping,
Mhm. Yeah,
right?
anxiety. Yep.
Yeah. And so instead it's like, okay, what is the, if I have named the thing that I'm saying I really, really want,
Mhm.
right? What is the simplest choice? Simplest. I mean, whether it's a phone call, whether
Mhm.
it's I mean, what is the absolute simplest choice I can make that is in alignment with the person I'm saying I want to be right now in this moment?
Mhm.
So I think that it is, and often when you kind of get out of the, getting too far ahead of yourself, and you just get back to right here, right now.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then I think actually it gets pretty clear in most cases.
Gotcha. Real quick, I did forget to ask earlier, where can people find you and where can they actually find Spaghetti on the Wall for anyone that's looking for ways to kind of untangle their own brain by throwing it at a wall?
Well, I do have a website. So the
Okay.
website is kristanswan.com, and it's so everything is there. Spaghetti on the Wall is there. I also my events list is there, so that's available.
Hmm.
I'm also super excited. I haven't really talked about this anywhere, so you are getting
Ooh.
a heads up. And I love, because it was kind of going directly to something you were saying earlier, is I have another journal coming out in the next couple of weeks that's called Heart Mapping. And
Ooh.
that is the full title is Heart Mapping, Create
Uh-huh.
the Cartography of Your Inner Landscape.
Mm.
And so that is for I think it's a great companion to Spaghetti on the Wall,
Hmm.
but it also, the format for heart mapping is is to actually draw. It's not meant to, it's not to draw necessarily representationally. It is the discipline is to center yourself, take a couple of breaths, put pen to paper, quill to paper, whatever your instrument is. And it's a continuous line drawing, and to draw
Mm.
with constant and continuous contact to the paper for as
Uh-huh.
long as you need in that moment.
Huh.
And I love this exercise because there are days when, as much as I love my Spaghetti on the Wall and doing that journaling practice, I am
Uh-huh.
just like, oh my gosh, I don't even know. I don't know where like words aren't available.
Yeah.
So I
Mm.
just need to go, as you were saying, I need to go straight here and just say, just let that flow out of me in whatever squiggle, scribble,
Mm.
meandering line, sharp corners, whatever it is that is in me. And then I can be just like, oh, okay, now I can get going. So I'm going to be adding that because I think that that is a great compliment. And I know for myself how valuable my creative journey, just in exploring different artistic mediums, has been. And there
Mm.
was a time when words weren't really that available to me. And words are so, there's so much, they're very powerful. There's a lot of association with them. And so, I think my early way of connecting to myself was through visual arts, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
through different crafts and doing things with my hands.
Mm.
And so it's been kind of, you mentioned that I had a career as a landscape designer, and a lot of that work, I was very hands-on, kind of just
Mm.
creating these these spaces that just spoke to who the person was that I was working for. And but it was, it was such a teaching tool for me to get into connection with who I was. So I think that there's many different ways that we can do this.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, words are so, I love the fact that I am in a place where words is the medium that makes sense for me now,
Uh-huh.
because it it's I can connect with others more easily using words.
Mm.
Um, and just to kind of throw it out there to the listeners that I think that, you know, creative exploration, and not necessarily, you don't have to think of yourself as an artist, but whether it's cooking or, there's all sorts of creative exploration that can also be a great way to take that, to give yourself some stillness and get to know yourself, and allow for your creativity to be rediscovered if it's been kind of tamp down.
Yeah. Oof. I love that. And thank you for giving us a little bit of sneak peek to the next bit of art. Well, art that you got coming out, because let's face it, it is an art project of sorts, you
It is
know?
an art project. Yeah. And it definitely, and, and heart mapping really, I feel like it would not have come forth without the practice of spaghetti on the wall and getting
Mm-hmm.
that, again, having a means to kind of quiet some of the noise, the external noise, and then also the noise in here.
Yeah. And I mean, whenever we clear up that noise, we have no idea what's going to come out from it. And I'm just glad that heart mapping came out, because it sounds like automatic writing of sorts, but
Yeah.
a little bit different. And I really like that twist on it. It's pretty cool.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, I've got one last question for you. So, Kristan, the name of this podcast is Retrieving Sanity, and we explore how all facets of living life impact mental health. Looking at the incredible motley adventures of your life, what does retrieving sanity personally mean to you today, and what's one practice or perspective you believe is crucial for anyone on that journey? And it's okay if you say journaling, because, I mean, that's what we're doing, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I know, not to be super boring or repetitive, but I will say for me, it was journaling, and specifically a journaling practice that gave me the space to get to know myself, and then by extension to trust myself, because I as we touched on, the way that I grew up was pretty chaotic, and so most of my energy and focus went to navigating the kind of unconventional life and the adults in the room. And so I developed some very good coping skills and survival mechanisms, and it really didn't allow for a lot of curiosity about, who I was and what was important to me.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I mean, I think journaling is one of those really awesome things. I've done it for a long time. I've done it on and off through the years, and it's one of those things that I constantly tell myself I need to keep doing it. Why do I keep buying journals? But I mean, they're just really cool looking books and everything like that.
Oh my gosh.
So,
I know. I still buy other journals, even though I have my journal. I mean, I am just like, I am a sucker for a great journal, right?
yeah, like I could go into Barnes and Noble and walk out with a couple of journals, and it's like, hey, they're going to be sitting there, not necessarily filled out, or maybe they got different random stuff in there, but I mean,
Yeah.
they're just cool books. So.
Well, and that is, if that is how we choose to play in this moment, then heck, it's not, we're not hurting anyone, right? I mean, there's, yes, having a love affair with journals is, I would say, is very okay.
Well, I'm glad to get the A-okay from someone that does journaling.
I'm talking to myself, really.
Okay.
I don't even want you to see, what is behind me in terms of the stacks of, yes.
Fair enough. Well, Kristan, thank you very much for being on Retrieving Sanity tonight, and it's been an honor and a pleasure, and I'm just excited to try spaghetti on the wall, because I mean, if we use it for cooking, maybe we can use it to untangle some stuff in our heads too. So
absolutely. Oh, well, gosh, Keegan, thank you so much for creating this space for conversations that that are really meaningful, and I think that we need to be connecting in this way as much as we possibly can these days.
Oh, that's for sure. Nowadays, with the world on fire, everyone has their own personal fire extinguisher. Some work better on some fires, some work better on other fires. and it's all about pulling together, making that community a little bit, and making sure that, hey, I got some experience, you got some experience, we all got some experience, let's share it.
Exactly.
And so I'm just really glad to have you on, and thank you for doing what you do for the world, because that's how we make the world a little bit of a happier place, so that we can play and our children can play in the future too.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Keegan.
Of course, thank you. And everyone out there, thank you for listening to Retrieving Sanity on WDJY 99.1 FM. And as always, don't forget, you've got to try to love yourself. Try to love others if you can, but you've got to love yourself first. If you're going through a mental health crisis, you can dial 988. And if you're in the LGBTQ plus community, you can dial the Trevor Project up in Canada. With that being said, everyone out there, have a safe one, and we'll see you next week. Much love. Schlan.